Good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Well, it's not been a quiet few days, has it? The GOAT has bolted. Cristiano Ronaldo out at Old Trafford after using his bombshell interview with me on this show to set the record straight about what was going on at the club and his concerns. Well, tonight I'm going to set the record straight myself on Cristiano Ronaldo and on that interview, because 1 week on, is still making global headlines.
Breaking news, Cristiano Ronaldo's time at Old Trafford officially over. Manchester United saying that they have mutually parted ways, effective immediately.
All of this stems from that explosive interview with Piers Morgan.
Cristiano Ronaldo has left Manchester United with immediate effect. It follows a TV interview with Piers Morgan where he claimed he felt disrespected.
And then that explosive interview that he had with Piers Morgan saying those very hurtful things about Manchester United.
And after an explosive interview with Piers Morgan, the writing seemed to be on the wall.
Like I said, it was explosive. Well, this show's been at the centre of a true global story, and that story really is only just beginning, because minutes after Ronaldo confirmed he'd leave United by mutual consent, the Glazer family, who own the club, confirmed they're looking to sell. The American family bought Manchester United for $1.3 billion in 2005. Now they may get 4 times that amount. And if that sounds like good business, well, it is for them. But that's precisely why United fans have such a problem with the Glazers, who loaded United with debt and presided over a steady but massive decline on the pitch. They seem more concerned about selling shirts and shares than winning trophies, the opposite of what English football should be about. This is what Ronaldo himself said to me about the Glazers.
The owners of the club, they don't.
The Glazers.
The Glazers, they don't care about the club. I mean, professional sport. As you know, Manchester is a marketing club. They will get his money from the marketing. The sports, they don't really care, in my opinion. The fans, they're always right. I think the fans should know the truth, should know that the players, we want the best for the club.
So did Ronaldo's condemnation of the Glazers force the issue after years of protest by supporters? You can judge that for yourself. When the biggest superstar in the club's history calls out mismanagement at the very top, how could their position be tenable? Supporters and club legends like Roy Keane and Gary Neville have also slammed the Glazers. Neville even called on Ronaldo to use his status to put them under pressure. Stand up now and speak, he wrote this summer. The club is in crisis. It needs its leaders to lead. Ronaldo's the only one who can grab the situation by the scruff of the neck, exclamation mark. So Ronaldo did speak out. And the same Gary Neville said he should be sacked.
I don't know what's going on, but since the Sir Alex Ferguson left, I saw not evolution in the club. The progress was zero. Nothing changed. Surprisingly, not only the pool, the jacuzzi, even the gym. Even some points, the technology, the kitchen, the chefs, which is I appreciate, lovely persons. They stop in a time. We see many things that I'm used to see when I was 20, 21, 23, so surprised me a lot.
Well, 13 years after his spectacular first spell at United, Ronaldo returned to find a club that had only gone backwards in his view, and that's the real reason he wanted to do this interview in the first place. He just had enough, and he felt he wasn't getting the respect that his extraordinary career deserved, and nor were the fans getting what they deserve for supporting United week in, week out. Last season, Ronaldo scored 24 goals for a team in total turmoil, 1 Premier League goal more than Harry Kane, England's captain, who is considered one of the top strikers in the world right now. But still, they blamed Ronaldo. His own coach, Erik ten Hag, disrespected him repeatedly in public. Journalists cashed in on his status for clickbait, many of the stories completely untrue. Ronaldo soaked all this up for a long time, even though many of the stories about him were false and hurtful. No more so than the lie that he skipped pre-season training to force a transfer when in fact his baby daughter was sick in hospital just months after her twin brother had tragically died. Ronaldo told me the executives at the club didn't even believe him. No wonder he felt very little loyalty to them in return. Well, now this chapter in his record-breaking career is over. Many people have accused me of using Ronaldo, speculating that he must surely regret ever sitting down with me. In fact, the opposite is true. He's very happy with everything about the interview. He said what he wanted to say, and he spoke because he wanted to speak. He texted me repeatedly this week. All good, as we said on Friday, when it finally all aired, as he's in Doha now in Qatar to captain Portugal at the World Cup. The future is great, he says, and I reckon for him it probably will be, even at 37. He's a megastar, the biggest icon in football history, with 500 million Instagram followers. Put that in context, 130 million more than his nearest rival, Lionel Messi, his rival for everything. Ronaldo's a merchandising monster, will make a fortune whichever club he signs for. And he's still a goal machine, too. You don't go from scoring 24 goals last season to a terrible striker in 4 or 5 months. There's been a lot of knee-jerk reaction from some United fans, claiming he's trashed his legacy at the club. Really? Literally one of the greatest to ever put on a United shirt. You were lucky to have him, lucky to watch him. Show him a bit more respect. Ronaldo won't take a penny to leave. He's foregone any of his remaining £17 million left on his deal. All he wants is his freedom and to go and try his luck somewhere else where he hopes he'll be given more respect. And if his legacy is ultimately to get rid of the Glazers from Manchester United and English football, all those people criticising him now will probably be cheering him and saying, thank you, Cristiano. And on the subject of football and thanks, my sincere thanks also go to the first team that manages to get through a day of this tournament without a pathetic piece of virtue signalling. Today, it was the Germans. You might have been following this increasingly ludicrous debate over whether people should wear armbands to show their support for the LGBT community. Full disclosure, I'm completely supportive of all LGBTQ rights. Always have been. But I never understood this whole thing about the armband. I want players to play football at the World Cup, not a virtue signal. And it's all gone exactly how I predicted, which is that actually, when they were threatened for the first time with a booking, which is someone waving a yellow card at them, they've all capitulated. The German team today did this. I mean, really? This is to send a point to FIFA that they've been silenced, they've been gagged, they can't wear their armbands. Oh, get over yourselves. It's honestly embarrassing. England have been embarrassing about this. The captain, Harry Kane, was going to wear his armband, show his great support for the community. OK, we'll do it then. Wear your armband. Don't then bottle it because you might get a yellow card. If any player right now at the World Cup wears one of these armbands, which I don't think they should be doing anyway, because I don't think it'll achieve anything, any one of them did it right now and got a booking, they'd be global heroes, probably get a knighthood. But none of them have got the balls. Listen to Ray Winston, one of my favourite actors, about what he said about this today.
Harry, you can't let them tell you what to do. Wear the armband, they're going to book you. If they book you, they'll probably send you off, and if they do, again. Wear the armband.
Exactly. Can you imagine if Harry Kane got sent off for wearing an armband supporting One Love? All hell would break loose, and not at him. He'd be a hero around the world. So then bottle it, honestly. Embarrassing for Harry, for England, for the FA, and for the Germans to do what they did today. And I keep thinking, if you don't focus on the football, you know what happens? Germany got beaten by Japan. That's what happens when you're more worried about than you are about stopping goals flying in the back of your net. Well, she meant a lot to millions of people. She defined an era, the Queen. That's what everyone says. That's why her face beams out from front pages across the entire planet today. Literally every front page of every paper in the world. How many people could command that kind of respect and attention? But sadly, for all the good things that have been said, there have also been some clueless cretins, no other word for them, who even a moment of shared grief is just an excuse for them to get out there and virtue signal their abuse. Some so-called academics in America and some journalists in the United States using this moment to trash the British monarchy and insult the Queen. The most disgusting comments from supposedly intelligent people. One academic, use the word loosely, wished Her Majesty a painful death when she heard that she was dying. This is on Twitter. She teaches people in America. This is all based on the idea that she was personally responsible for colonising, even genocide, for the whole British Empire. First of all, it's disgustingly disrespectful on a day when so many people are in mourning. Secondly, it's historically illiterate. The Queen ruled the Commonwealth with respect and affection. That's why all the leaders who met her loved her. She presided over the end of the British Empire, and in doing so, she granted independence and sovereignty to millions. And lastly, it's irrelevant today. The British Empire is responsible for bad things and some good things, but all of them happened a very long time ago. Different rules, different societies, different rulers, a different age. We can debate the vices and virtues of Britain's history, of course we can. But to those social justice stirrers using a nation's grief to burnish their worthiness, I simply say this: get your facts straight and show some respect. Welcome back to Uncensored. Israel's ambassador to the UK has emphatically rejected any prospect of a two-state solution. Here's what she told Sky News' Mark Austin.
Is there still a chance for a two-state solution?
I think it's about time for the world to realize the Oslo paradigm failed on the 7th of October, and we need to build a new one. And in order to build a new one...
Does that new one include the Palestinians living in a state of their own? Is that what it includes?
I think the biggest question is what type of Palestinians are on the other side. This is what Israel realized
do they
on
have
the 7th of October.
Though?
The answer is absolutely no.
Well, her comments followed a stark warning by President Biden that Israel's indiscriminate bombing, as he put it, in Gaza is weakening international support, and the Prime Minister Netanyahu's right-wing government is making the prospect of peace increasingly impossible. Joining me now is Mark Regev, Senior Advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Regev, thank you very much indeed for joining us again. Just start, first of all, if we could, with Israel's ambassador to the UK, Tzipi Hotovely, coming out very strongly in this interview with Sky, in which she said there's no prospect of any two-state solution, and that's gone around the world. Do you agree with that? I mean, is that it? That's done? And is that Israel's position now?
Well, we're obviously not close to peace at the moment. We're fighting a war against Hamas, and we're focused on winning that war. But in a long-term arrangement, we have a formula that is simple, and it works, I believe. And that formula is as follows. The Palestinians should have all the rights, all the capabilities to govern themselves, and they shouldn't have the powers that can hurt or threaten Israel. I think that's a sensible formula.
So that they shouldn't have their own state?
Well, it depends how you define the term state. I'll give you a
Well, should they have the same rights as Israel, for example?
Well, I'll ask you the following question, Piers. Should the Palestinians, if they have a state, should they be able to sign, let's say, a military agreement, a military treaty with Iran? Should they be able to have an army, an air force? Should they have all those military powers that could theoretically threaten the state of Israel? And the answer, in our view, is clearly no.
Why should they be prohibited from having... My question would be, why should they be prohibited from having exactly the same rights as a state to Israel? Wouldn't that be ultimately the way you actually achieve peace? Not allowing the Palestinians to have the same rights as Israelis has just not worked, has it? I mean, demonstrably not worked.
On the contrary, if this is going to work, it has to be based on realism. We can't base peace on assumptions that just aren't founded on reality. And Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel, who wanted to make peace with the Palestinians, who was the Prime Minister at the time of the signing of the Oslo Accords, he gave a speech, and he was very clear. He said that the Palestinians will have less than a state. Yitzhak Rabin said, the man who was shot for his efforts to move forward on the peace process. He said that the future Palestinian areas will have to be demilitarized. He said the Jordan Valley, that area on the eastern edge of the Palestinian territories, would have to remain under Israeli control. The idea that a Palestinian area will have to be demilitarized in any future settlement, that's common sense.
And it's been reported, and the ambassador said yesterday the same figure, that the Israeli Defense Forces so far killed 7,000 Hamas terrorists. Do you agree? Is that the figure that you think is correct? And if so, again, I think I've asked you this before, how do you know?
Well, this is what our intelligence is telling us. This is more or less the figure. We've been hitting Hamas and we've been hitting their military machine very hard. and we will continue to do so until we've dismantled their military machine and taken out their top command structure.
How many civilians have you killed?
Once again, that number is, we're relying here on Hamas numbers. We don't want to see a single civilian killed. You know that, Piers.
Well, what does your intelligence tell you if it's so sure about the number of Hamas that have been killed? How many civilians have been killed? You must have the same intelligence, surely.
I agree, but I told you I wasn't sure of the first number either. We're working on approximations. What I can tell you as a matter of policy is we want to keep the number of civilian casualties to the bare minimum. But we face an enemy that deliberately wants to see those numbers rise because they see that as a way to pressure the world, to pressure Israel for a ceasefire, because that's the lifeline for Hamas. We are destroying Hamas, Piers. In the north, we're seeing more and more Hamas terrorists surrender. You've seen pictures today from a particular hospital where we saw 70 Hamas fighters come out with their weapons above their heads and surrender to the IDF.
But what we're also seeing, Mr. Regev, if I may just pick up on that, we're also seeing the President of the United States, your biggest ally, coming out and saying that Israel is using indiscriminate bombing. Now, that is a breach of international law. He's basically accusing you of committing war crimes.
So we are not carpet bombing the Gaza Strip. We are not indiscriminately targeting
Why does America's president think you are?
Well, I think the people who are familiar with the information know that we have a rigorous process of target selection.
Are you saying he's not getting good enough intelligence?
I don't know, because his remarks weren't recorded. They were just reported. And I don't know exactly how he said it or in what context. But I do know
Well, he used the phrase indiscriminate bombing. And as you know, that is a war crime. If that is the case,
so that is not correct. That is not correct. Israel does not indiscriminately bomb Gaza. You can actually see the pictures. You see a house that is standing next to a house that has been destroyed. When there's a Hamas target, we go after that target. We do not, I repeat, do not indiscriminately bomb in Gaza.
CNN has reported today that 40 to 55% of the 29,000 air-to-ground munitions used by Israel have been unguided dumb bombs, which have a lack of precision and therefore expose a much higher threat to civilians in densely populated areas. Is that figure correct?
No. First of all, I would reject the use of the term dumb bombs. There are different types of munitions, and we don't target a facility, we don't target a site unless there is clear intelligence that there is a Hamas target that needs to be taken out. I want to stress that again and again and again. We have rules of stages that must be met before we target, before we use munitions. There's a process of identification, of intelligence analysis, of then a discussion, what is the correct munitions for that particular target, and only then will we act to destroy the target.
New British Foreign Secretary David Cameron, former Prime Minister, of course, has come out today and said that extremist settlers, by targeting and killing Palestinian civilians, it means on the West Bank, are undermining security and stability for both Israelis and Palestinians. Israel must take stronger action to stop settler violence and hold the perpetrators accountable. We are banning, this is the UK, those responsible for settler violence from entering the UK to make sure our country cannot be a home for people who commit these intimidating acts. Strong words from Mr. Cameron. Your response?
Well, we're as a government, we're opposed to any sort of vigilante violence, and we will arrest people who are involved in it. From our point of view, anyone who acts that way is acting against the law, and we'll bring the justice system down against them. We'll make arrests and people will go to jail. But I think it must be said that if one looks on the violence in the West Bank, and of course we condemn and we act against vigilante Jewish violence, but the overwhelming majority of the violence, 99% of it, is in the other direction. And that has to be put in perspective.
What does your intelligence tell you? Do your intelligence figures, what do they tell you in terms of number of Israelis killed on the West Bank by Palestinians since October the 7th? And conversely, the number of Palestinians killed by Israelis?
So first of all, we had that terrible attack in Jerusalem just last week, which you'll recall.
I just wonder whether you know what the relative figures are.
No, we've taken out many more Hamas terrorists, because what we've tried to do over the last few weeks since this crisis started...
I thought Hamas didn't operate on the West Bank. I've been repeatedly assured
Piers,
that.
of course it does. Piers, of course they operate on the West Bank. They're not the government on the West Bank the way they are in Gaza.
So what are the numbers
Hamas
then?
cells. You have Hamas cells across the West Bank.
Right, but what are the numbers,
cells that
Mr.
come up-
Regev? How many Palestinians have died on the West Bank since the start of this, and how many Israelis?
I can't give you a figure. I didn't bring that to the interview, and I apologize. Maybe you have a figure for me.
I just know that it's. I don't have the precise numbers, but I know it's massively higher number of Palestinians.
Yes, it
have been
is.
killed.
But once again, we're not talking about civilians. We're not talking about uninvolved people.
But
We're
many of them
talking
are
about
civilians.
Hamas terrorists.
And
No,
they're
I disagree.
And honestly,
we are being as surgical.
Listen,
we're being
as
surgical.
you know, I've always said Israel has a right to defend itself after what happened. I stand by that. The proportionality of that response, I think, is becoming increasingly concerning to everybody, including the American president. But I think on the West Bank, it is inarguable that the behaviour of these settlers, the extremist settlers, is completely out of control now. And surely you would see that that is, aside from everything else, that is the least justifiable part of all of this, isn't it?
But I'm not justifying it. Neither is the government of Israel. If people are acting in a vigilante way, the state will act against them. They'll be arrested and they'll go through the courts. And if they've committed crimes, they'll go to jail. There's no excuse for it. No one's justifying it. All I'm saying to you is the government of Israel acts firmly against extremist violence. But to be fair, I can ask you, does the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank, do they act against their extremist violence? And the answer is no. Do you know, we're talking, what is it? We're close to 70 days since the October 7th massacre. And the Palestinian Authority, the so-called moderates, have yet to condemn that terrible, atrocious attack against civilians. That's the difference.
Okay.
We condemn extremism. We fight extremism. What do they do?
Last time you came on, I asked you whether we could have an interview with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's not given one yet to any European television network, as far as I'm aware, outside of Israel, and he's also talked to American networks. I ask you again, will he come and talk to us?
I have to tell you, he hasn't done an interview at all since we spoke last. So
Right.
Don't feel discriminated against Piers. He hasn't done a single interview. When he starts doing other interviews again, your name will come up.
Thank you. Mr. Regev, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir.
Now we've watched the Ukrainian people fight for their lives with a resilience and resolve that's astounded the rest of the world. And it's the Ukrainian leaders who've led by example. The boxing Klitschko brothers have been on the ground, shoulder to shoulder with their countrymen, showing grit and determination to defend their country against Putin's army. Just before we came on air, I spoke to former world heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko from Kyiv in Ukraine, where his brother Vitaly is the mayor. It was one of those interviews where, when I'd finished, I said to the team, we've got to run every single word of that because I found it so uniquely powerful. So we are. Here it is, the whole interview, completely uncensored from start to finish. And I started by asking Vladimir Klitschko if this is the most important fight of his life.
I would say that this battle is definitely the most important of our lives, of the Ukrainians. We never were expecting to be attacked as it happened on 24th of February. And this senseless war has taken thousands of lives, destroyed infrastructure in the country, and still going on. The fights are still going on while we're talking. And every night, every day, there are rocket attacks. Up to 2,000 rockets have been launched from Belarus and Russia to destroy our life of Ukrainians that were associating themselves with democratical values of the free world. And we have committed us to it since 2014. And the world totally underestimated the annexation of Crimea by Russia, support of the Lugansk and Donetsk so-called separatists, and continuing with invasion of the entire country. Russia needs Ukraine, obviously, as we see, but Russia doesn't need Ukrainians. And that's why civilians are getting killed and residential districts in the cities being bombed with phosphoric bombs and cluster bombing, which is continuing. That was in Bucha, Gostomel, Irpin, Makariv. All those satellite cities were acting like a shield for the capital of Ukraine, and they were taking the first hit. I was in Bucha. I saw it with my own eyes. All the civilians that had been tortured with the tight hands behind their head, behind their back, and with a shot in the head, executed. There's so many children that have been suffering, killed or injured, up to 1,000 children. We can't really give exact numbers because the numbers are still going on and counting. And the world just has underestimated this madman's man aggression. And now, as the consequence, and I remember those lines from the world leaders saying, if Russia is going to cross the line and invade Ukraine, there are going to be consequences. And those consequences for almost 2 months we were taking, the Ukrainians been taking. Eventually, now the free world is openly supporting us with defensive weapons, with the weapons, period. In the war, you cannot fight with bare knuckles. We need weapons to protect our sky above our heads and protect our home country. And the war is reckless. And I couldn't even imagine in my life that any other human can do something like that to the other human. And that's what I've seen in Bucha. But the repetition of Bucha is in multiple cities in the country. So this genocide of the Ukrainian population must be stopped. And this is not the word that the world should be scared of, even think about it or pronounce it. It is happening in Ukraine. It is happening. Mariupol has been destroyed completely. And we just hope and do anything for it so that this war is going to be stopped with the help of the free world. And I want to use just one moment of this monologue and say thank you to Great Britain, Boris Johnson, that has stepped in. He was trying a lot from the early beginning to find the way how he can talk to Putin, how he can prevent the first steps that unfortunately were made and the lines were crossed. And all the support and supply that we were receiving from the beginning, and this is so great to have allies and partners of our nation. And I just want to say thank you. And I want to say, please don't stop supporting us as long as this war is still going, because our economy is down to nothing. We have great will, and we stand strong with our will against one of the strongest armies in the world, but our will is stronger than any army or any weapon. And we show it. We're dedicated to the country, to freedom in Ukraine, in Europe, and in the world. Because from this war, not just Ukraine is suffering, the entire Europe and the world is suffering. The prices are going to go up. The gas prices, food prices. So everything is connected with each other in this world. We're living in a global world, and we're very, very connected with each other. And it is very important to keep this chain connected. If Ukraine fails, you're going to fail too, guys.
Vladimir, I mean, that's one of the most powerful openings to an interview I think I've probably ever done in my life. The passion, the eloquence, the resilience in your voice, the determination. Ultimately, we're 82 or 3 days into this war now. Putin clearly felt he could just run over Ukraine and seize it. That's failed. But he's waged this genocidal rampage through your country. And I guess the big question now is, can Ukraine win? Can you actually defeat Vladimir Putin?
We didn't start this war, obviously. We're taking the consequences. We cannot plan for the next minute, hour, day. We need support that partially we're getting. We are determined to protect ourselves, our families, our children, our parents that are with us or buried in this ground. This is our home. There is not even a doubt. We don't ask ourselves, can we win it? This is our home. You do anything for your family, for your children, anything to protect, to cover, to give future, to be more creative and not destructive. And that's what Ukrainians are. We are creative. We're great at aviation. If you think about just first helicopter that was launched a couple of hundreds of meters from here in a city by Igor Sikorsky, we probably, you know, it's not advertising, but in IT area, we're great. And you're probably using WhatsApp, and it was created by Ukrainian, Jan Kum, originally from Vinnytsia. So, and we can endlessly count on and on. We are well educated. We're giving to the world. We're not taking. Yes, we ask a lot about help and support now, but we were giving a lot too. And we will give more. Trust me.
One of the most extraordinary things, Vladimir, one of the most extraordinary things about this war is the way it's played out in real time on social media. We've all been able to watch the horror as it's unfurled, but we've also been able to watch people like you and your brother, Vitaly, who's the mayor of Kyiv, and of course, President Zelensky. And the strange curiosity about the three of you is that two of you are former professional boxers, and one was a comedian. And yet you've come to symbolize the astonishing resilience of the Ukrainian people. Where do you get that from, you and your brother? Is it from your childhood? Is it from your father, who was a pilot with the Soviet Air Force and who had to go in after Chernobyl, and that, in the end, cost him his life? Is that where you get this strength from? Were you, from a very early age, effectively shown how to fight for your country and how to survive this kind of thing?
Look, I'm not going to talk a lot about my brother and myself, because I believe there are women and men that right now standing in the front line and protecting our country and have lost their lives as well. And I have lots of respect for all the Ukrainians that doing for the past 83 days what we've been doing. And obviously, you understand, it's like in economy, entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. So you understand that you're a piece of a bigger puzzle. And the big puzzle actually exists and functions from small pieces like you. And I do know that, and remember, as we all are probably, those famous lines, don't ask what country can do for you, ask what it can do for your country. And obviously, I asked myself, I could be with my child somewhere in the safety, and just probably my child is the most important thing in my life. But I also understood that there's much bigger things, and freedom, and your people, and your country, and basically this connection that you're part of this big puzzle, and you need to stay connected, especially in these challenging times. And not just challenging, this is the times of war. Who would have thought in 2022? Well, just recently we're looking at Elon Musk and NASA ships exploring Mars, and I could take a look from my Tesla, you know, about the weather on Mars. And who would have thought that someone else is going to collect land and say, this is our land, we need more land, it's not enough land, and create something that exists in just one person's mind. And it's effectiveness and populism is definitely needs to be reconsidered in the world, because propaganda and populism is leading to something like we have as a result now. But that's for the time after the war, obviously, and been always like that. It's been always like that, the beginning and the end of anything, and the war as well.
Vladimir, are you prepared to
the time after the war?
Yeah.
But it's eventually going to happen, and we definitely need to. The world must learn from this senseless aggression that is happening now again after Second World War.
Are you prepared, if it comes to it, to lose your life to fight for your country?
I asked myself this question when Russian forces were in outskirts of the city, and if I wouldn't be ready for it, I would have left. The city of Kyiv, with almost 5 million people like a sponge, it's a big city and busy city, was empty. You could hear the explosions, constant explosions, because the fights were going on in the outskirts of the city. And you must count with anything while you're in Kyiv or in Ukraine, with anything, even now. And this question is basically everyone in Ukraine, Ukrainian or not, and as you know, there are journalists, your colleagues, journalists, been killed precisely with sniper shots and lost their lives. If you're in Ukraine, you must know that that could be your last moment in life, last trip in life. And are you ready to give up anything you have for the country and freedom? And that's the question that millions of Ukrainians asking. And the answer is yes, because you could do anything for your children, anything for your country, anything for your parents, anything that you love. And that's something that just cannot be in a different way.
What is your message to Putin?
I've been asked this question many times in multiple occasions and interviews. It's just, there's no particular line that could do anything to Putin to change his life, or to a person in this case, and change his opinion or stop this war. It's just in mad person's mind, and how you can convince a madman, I don't even know. And there is nothing to communicate, because obviously what was coming from Russian side is a lie. When they said we're never gonna offend anyone, invade anyone, it was just happening. And this is in multiple cases. As soon as Russia, Putin, his army, or foreign ministers, or anybody involved were making statements, that was exactly the opposite. So how can we communicate? I don't see even sense or reason. There is just one line that not just Putin, but the entire world must take it seriously. Stop this senseless war. And this is on Putin, and as well as on the free world, because without your support and help, and if you're gonna keep standing silently and just observing what is going on in Ukraine, blood is on your hands too, because you do nothing about it, if you do nothing about it. And that's why stay loud to stop this war. I'm not going to get into details, but stop this war. As soon as the war is going to be stopped, lives are going to be saved.
And Vladimir,
there's no emotions.
What is your view of what should be done, for example, with Russian sports people, athletes and so on? There is a view that they should all be banned from any competition. There's another view that only the team playing under the Russian flag should be banned, and individuals should be allowed to continue. What is your view as one of the great sporting champions, certainly of my lifetime?
On the economical side, isolation of Russia. On different points of it, gas, oil, coal, No ships can park at any ports. They should understand that the world is against this senseless war. Against. Not just with wording and sanctions, but in reality nothing but isolation. Athletes, next Olympic Games, I think that IOC should ban the Russian team now. The war is going on. They cannot participate in the next Olympic Games. They cannot participate in any athletic events because this war is represented by Russia. So athletes representing Russia. And there is definitely connection. And I believe that this is going to be the message. And that's exactly the answer for the question, what would you say to Mr. Putin? It's really saying is cheap now. Action speaks louder than words. Isolation. Isolation. And this isolation speaks louder than any line and any word, because isolation is painful. Yes, it's going to be painful for athletes, it's going to be painful for economy, it's going to be painful for everybody and anybody that is involved with Russia, silently trading with Russia, supporting them financially with this, in this trade, because the money that Russia is getting and filling up their budget, they're getting and producing more weapons and financing their soldiers that today killing us Ukrainians. And that must be stopped with isolation. And athletes is not an exception.
Vladimir, when this war is over, and one day it will be over, do you hope to get back to boxing again? There's been lots of speculation that that may be what you want to do.
You're going to put a smile on my face. I just realized recently that I haven't smiled a lot in the past 3 days. And you just said something about sports, because that puts me in somewhere my comfort zone, because that's where my passion is. And honestly, I was thinking like I should just take Tyson Fury and tweet "Last Dance?" ? Since he wants to retire, and we're supposed to have this rematch, and I was thinking about it. You know, I didn't do it because my mind was in totally different, or now in a different world. But it just, you know, after getting those news that he defended the title and he is retiring, and I wish him the best. But I was really thinking I should send this. I should tweet this Last Dance.
Do you feel like it's unfinished business with you two?
I believe. Well, that was all the dreams before the war, and I was sharing those dreams. I had a dream to become the oldest heavyweight champion of the world, and not to break the jaw in the ring. You know, obviously speaking of the contrahand, but to break the record, and that's to become the oldest heavyweight champion after George Foreman. So I was 45, now I'm 46, and that's exactly the time. That was the plan, but we're talking about something that was happening before, and now there's a big question mark what is going to go on with the war, and there's a lot of question marks. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, so that's why.
I think that's right, but I also
step
think
by step.
I loved your reaction when I mentioned it, because it must be hellish what you're all going through in Ukraine. And the moment I mentioned something which took you back to your life before this, your face lit up. You know, the last time I saw you was at the Alfred Dunhill Links golf tournament in October last year. And I remember you were celebrating one night with Andrei Shevchenko, the great Ukrainian football player. And life seemed pretty good for all of us right then. And life has changed very dramatically now. And I very much hope that, you know, come the autumn, this war is over. You've got your country back. You've won. And I get to see you again up in Scotland on the links there, because that would be a sign of, I think, a reward for the astonishing courage that you and the Ukrainian people have shown.
Fingers crossed. hopefully the peace in Ukraine will come sooner than later. Thank you for having me, Mr. Morgan. It was great seeing you.
You know, it's
Cheers
great.
from Kyiv, Ukraine.
It's been such an honour to interview you. I'm in total awe of all that you're doing and all the Ukrainian people. We all are over here, and I think the more that Britain can do and the more the West can do generally to help you defeat Putin, the better. And I will be urging them to do that. And I wish you and your family all the very best, Vladimir, as you go forward. And I just hope that you continue to confound all the skeptics and the doubters, and that you win this war, because it matters so much, I think, to democracy that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, joining me now is the Talk TV presenter and former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries, a former BBC Newsnight political editor Michael Crick, and the chairman and founder of Intertalent Rights Group, Jonathan Shalit. So welcome to all of you. Michael Crick, let me start with you as a BBC man for so many years. What do you make of this? Obviously, we don't, as things stand, really know exactly what has happened here. There's claim and counterclaim, but we do know that a very senior BBC presenter has been suspended by the corporation. And we do know that apparently the first allegations were made to the BBC about his conduct back in May. So what do we make of this?
Well, I think tonight it looks rather less serious for the BBC than it did, say, 12 hours ago. First of all, we've had the Metropolitan Police today saying at this stage they're not investigating, which rather suggests that they don't think the evidence that they're aware of so far is strong enough. But then, much more important, is this statement by the lawyers for this young man that the Sun story is a load of rubbish, and that he actually contacted the Sun to tell them that on Friday. Well, I mean, you're a former tabloid editor. What was the editor of the Sun? What was the Sun newspaper doing, going ahead and defaming an unnamed member of the BBC staff on the basis of an experience by a young man that the young man denied? I mean, it seems to me that all of this attack, all of your monologue just now is all about attacking the BBC. I think the Sun newspaper, the Murdoch empire, has a lot to answer tonight. And frankly, one has to wonder whether the articles that the Sun has been running over the last few days are all part of that ongoing war between Mr. Murdoch and his newspapers and the British Broadcasting Corporation.
I mean, I think the Sun has been pretty robust in its response.
No,
Clearly,
it hasn't. It was a pathetic response tonight. That response tonight didn't...
I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not involved in the inner workings of the Sun on this. I have no inside knowledge of what evidence they had. All I've seen their statement, and it's clear that the mother of the alleged victim has clearly been talking freely to the Sun, apparently for no payment, about all this. So clearly the truth is going to emerge, and like I say, we don't actually know, as things stand, where that truth lies. And the Sun, of course, took a decision not to name the presenter. Let me bring in Nadine Dorries. I mean, Nadine, Michael Crick raises some interesting questions there, but again, we're all slightly guessing, aren't we, about what has really happened here. But is it right, as many believe, that the BBC, in the way they've handled this, once again seem to be lacking?
So, yeah, again, it seems like it doesn't matter what crisis threatens to engulf the BBC, and there have been many over a number of years. They seem completely unable to be on the front foot and to have a robust set of processes in place to deal with complaints as they happen. Part of the BBC's problem is that they just don't seem to be able to deal with issues as they arrive. And one would have thought the experience they've had, whether it's been with Frank Barth or Gary Lineker, or whether it's Jimmy Savile or whoever, whichever situation arises, you'd think that by now they've got enough experience with dealing with a potential crisis to know what to do, how to do it, how to protect their own brand, which is the BBC, and also how to make sure that they deal with the complaints effectively. Because, you know, at the back of all of these complaints, there are always real lives and real people and real victims. And that's part of the tragedy. If they could just get on the front foot and deal with things quickly and effectively, then a lot of hurt would be saved all round. And I think that's part of the problem. It's an inefficiency. and an inability to deal with what are very serious problems. And, you're quite right in your opening comments. The BBC is paid for by the British public, by licence fee payers, and that's not a cheap cost to people who are struggling with cost of living at the moment. The BBC has a responsibility to the people that it serves, and sometimes it just acts as though the only people the BBC have to satisfy are the BBC, is the BBC itself, and it isn't. It should be accountable, it should be transparent, and it has to answer to the public. And that's sometimes what it forgets and what it always fails to do.
Jonathan Shalit, there are lots of reputations at stake here. The BBC, the presenter concerned, obviously, the young alleged victim, that victim's family, so many people, indeed, the media themselves, of course, as Michael Crick said. What about the issue of social media? What about the way that so many completely unconnected BBC presenters have been dragged through the mud? I saw Nicky Campbell talking about how distressing he found it. Jeremy Vine, how distressing he found it. Gary Lineker having to clarify it wasn't him. Ryland Clark and so on. I mean, it's been appalling to watch, but it reminds me again that, the mainstream media have a lot of restrictions on them, a lot of restrictions now. Some of the most draconian, actually, in the free world. But social media remains the Wild West. What do we do about this?
Well, Nadine, when she was Culture Secretary, tried to do a lot about that. It's horrific what's going on social media. Not just this matter, continually terrible things are happening on social media and people are being named. I mean, the reason most people in Britain know who the individual presenter is because he's been named on social media. And to add to that, their pictures, which are going around social media, whether they're real pictures or AI pictures, I don't know. But the picture looks a pretty unpleasant picture. And the problem with social media, as you rightly said, Piers, whether it be Talk TV, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, they're very carefully governed. But social media is out of control. And the government, until now, in spite of all their efforts, have been unable to control social media.
Michael Crick, the presenter concerned, we all know who it is. The public don't know who it is yet. Would it be prudent for this presenter to simply come out if he has nothing to hide, if what this young alleged victim has put in this legal letter is true and there's nothing illegal or improper about whatever relationship they may or may not have had? Would it not be the smart thing to do for this presenter to come out and talk frankly about this and maybe not even defend himself, but just say, this is what happened and I've nothing to hide?
I think that might well make sense for them to do that. Indeed, I think managers in the BBC, there's some frustration there that this presenter hasn't done that yet and that they dearly wish that they would do so, because I think at some point they're going to have to come out and make a statement about what did and what didn't happen. And I suspect it's somewhere between I didn't do anything wrong and the allegations that the Sun has made. But I don't think that they can remain in hiding for forever. They're going to have to say something before long, and they might as well do it now rather than wait another few days or maybe a few more weeks.
May I step in, Piers, and say, all three of you have attacked the BBC in different ways. I think, as has happened today with this letter from a top law firm who's called Harbottle and Lewis, I understand, who are, as you said, a law firm connected with the Queen. They've sent a very firm letter saying that the alleged victim is saying what his parents have said wasn't true. On that basis, the BBC have been wise to hold back and not say too much, because the facts clearly aren't known. And I think it's wrong to expect the BBC to jump in and give a conclusion to this until they know. I also suspect the presenter in question has probably been told by the BBC to say nothing. I would put money on that. So I think there are no options but to wait. And also remember, all weekend, there's massive allegations of 17. He was 17 when we started. Well, the police have jumped in today and they've made it clear they're not rushing this. So we don't even know if the police agree it was a 17-year-old at the time. So I think, quite simply, as much as the public would like to know more and as much as everyone's pushing for the public to know more, the BBC has to be responsible to also the alleged victim, the presenter, the presenter's family. It's not simple to say, name and shame someone immediately without all the facts being known. That's not to say or condone what did or didn't happen, but I think caution is the right thing until all the facts are known.
No, I don't disagree with that, but it's been an awful mess, the way that other presenters have been dragged in from this. And, of course, We don't know what evidence the Sun has. They've been pretty cautious so far in what they published. They haven't revealed the name of the person they're talking about. They haven't revealed much information at all about that. So I think we have to wait and see what the Sun has. They've been, as I said, robust in their statement in response to this legal letter, and we'll see where this all takes us. Nadine Dorries.
Actually, I don't think, Piers, that they have been robust in response to this legal letter. What they've done is they've gone back on the attack against the BBC. They haven't actually specifically answered the question, the points made in this legal letter, which are that this young man has denied the story as total rubbish. And also, they haven't answered the point made in the legal letter that the young man contacted the Sun on Friday to tell them that it was rubbish. What's the Sun's response to that? I think, actually, it's a very weak response from the Sun tonight.
Well, I think we're going to find out, I suspect, from the Sun exactly what they have, which is behind their decision to publish in the first place, and we'll see what that is. But you make perfectly valid points. Nadine, you've had to deal at the sharp end in government of what to do about social media. What do you make of what's happened in the last few days with so many completely innocent people getting their reputations completely trashed?
And I've spoken to one of those people myself, actually. Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. The social media is like the Wild West. And with the online safety bill, which is being debated in the Lords at the moment, hopefully some of the amendments the Lords will put down to what has been a watered down bill since the new administration took over will have some really robust measures in to deal with some of this. But it's always going to be that balance between, freedom of speech, the fact that we now have social media, something which is still a relatively new and recent territory with the new emerging platforms which are constantly coming up. So it's always going to be a battle, and we're always going to play catch up. Whatever the online safety bill puts into law, which hopefully it will receive royal assent very later this year, will finish its journey through Parliament by the summer. Once that bill becomes law, there were provisions in it which mean that the bill can continually not have to play catch up and will continually be able to amend. I'm not sure if those powers will still stand by the time we reach the autumn. I hope they do, because if they don't, we'll be in a position where a bill becomes law in the autumn, which will already be out of date by the time that happens, because this platforms, AI, all the problems that we're facing at the moment as a result of internet usage moves so fast that it's very difficult for governments to keep up.
Nadine Dorries, thank you very much. Michael Crick, thank you very much. Jonathan Shalit, thank you very much. And we're told there are more revelations coming in the Sun newspaper tonight, so we will see what they have to say, and the story, I'm sure, has a long way to go.